I'm going to take you on a journey from 0 readers to 1 million in a year and a half of blogging. So I want to give a trigger warning before I start. I'm going to be talking about sexual harassment. So a year and a half ago, on October 23rd of 2017, I started a blog. I'd been reading a lot of other people's blogs, and they were really helping me. One example was Vaidehi Joshi's amazing Base CS series. You should definitely listen to her podcast, too. And I was inspired to start writing myself. So I made a challenge for myself. I was going to learn a new technology every week, write an app with it, and then write a blog post about it, which is way too much. So this project was for myself, nobody else. I had just recently started teaching at General Assembly, so I wasn't writing production code anymore. And so I wanted to stay fresh on the latest technologies that were coming out. So I started off on Medium, and I wrote a blog post about building art with CSS. And I got 36 readers, which sounds like nothing to you all in the audience, but to me was huge. I wrote a blog in high school about fashion, which I shouldn't have been giving advice about, but I had awesome posts such as things about how you shouldn't wear real fur and how to wear faux fur instead, so it was pretty on brand. And so I got no readers on that, even though I did it for a while, and so 36 felt like way more than I was expecting. I wrote my second post pretty soon after about a functional programming language called Elm for the front end, and how it was super hard for me to learn it. I got 262 views on Medium, and to me that was a it's happening moment, and it also kind of was for the Elm community because nobody was writing about them. So sorry to all the Elm fans in the audience. So shortly thereafter, one of my friends retweeted this Twitter account called The Practical Dev. And I ended up making an account and forgetting about it for a couple weeks. It no longer looks like this, but eventually I wrote my first post. I had just cross-posted that Elm post that I had written before, so no extra work. And it almost got up to 7,000 views. I was pretty salty in the article about Elm, but people still liked it. And I was writing it as a total beginner, but it still kind of took off, at least for me. So I wrote 12 blog posts, and I remember freaking out the first time I was on the dev homepage and thinking that was the coolest thing ever, and actually screaming in my office because I made it into JavaScript Weekly. And I started getting asked to speak about my blog posts. It was incredible. But the whole blog was a ton of work. Building an app each week is a lot. And so I ended up quitting. But I challenged myself, and I had learned so much. I helped myself a lot. I was learning all these new things, writing from a beginner's perspective, and even though I was writing as a beginner, it was still helping me and other people as well. Even if I got a technical detail wrong, it was okay because there's an edit button and you can always go back and change things. I still get things wrong. So a few months later, I moved to Connecticut, where I didn't know a single soul, and I had some time on my hands. So I started this blog called The Zen of Programming. It was a Gatsby blog that I spun up in a weekend, and it was named after the Zen of Python. Python's my favorite programming language, and so I named it after that. It's kind of a cheesy name, but it's fine. So at this point in my story, I'm going to go back a couple years. I grew up in a town of 3,000 people in rural New Hampshire. My high school class was 90 people, and there were 3 computers in the computer lounge in my high school, and I don't think any of them actually worked. So all that's to say, I didn't know what programming was until I stepped into a computer science classroom my sophomore year of college. And I thought that I was going to learn how to format a Microsoft Word document better. But instead, I was taught Python. I was typing things into a computer, and magic came out, and I fell in love with it. I decided that I was going to double major in computer science and completely changed my schedule around in order to do that. So I took my second class, which was in C++, and I was pulling all these all-nighters just to try and get through. I was going to all the office hours and working like I hadn't worked before in a class, and I still felt like I wasn't good enough at it. And I felt like I didn't fit in the classroom. I felt like I didn't look like anybody else. I didn't have the same interests. I still haven't seen Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, sorry everybody. And so I decided that programming wasn't for me and I quit. Life's funny, and it's a story for a different day, but I became a software engineer a couple months later. Whoops. And, but I can still count on one hand the number of women that I've worked on a team with in my career, and I've debated leaving the tech industry pretty much every day for the past 6 years. But I wanted to write this blog for the people like me who felt like they didn't belong in tech, and I made it pink. I tried to make it relatable and make my tone like an old friend who was teaching you about programming, and pretty much overnight, this blog kind of took off. So one of my first posts was about building a portfolio site, and it got to the top of the Hacker News and stayed there for a while. And so I got 55,000 reads on this blog post pretty much overnight. I was posting on 3 sites, which is a total valid thing to do, and I recommend. And then I wrote another post about my tips for new developers, based off of my own experiences and my students since I was teaching at a boot camp. And it got 70,000 reads, and it was incredible. I felt like my career was skyrocketing overnight, and I got recruited for all types of jobs, offered awesome speaking opportunities to write for companies, and my blog seemed to be getting featured in new places all the time. It was addictive to watch the numbers climb, and so cool to wake up every day and see where my blog posts were ending up. And I didn't feel like I was alone as much anymore, because I made this community of people like me who also felt like they maybe weren't the prototype of who fits in tech. And at this point, I would sometimes get one-off rude comments or dudes going down in the DMs, but the response was so positive that I didn't really care. And then I hit Reddit-gate. So I hit the front page of Reddit with my advice for new developers, which is a huge accomplishment, but it didn't really feel like it. Somebody sent me the link, and the comments were just gnarly. And they didn't end up with that post. Those are just some of them right there, but these are every day. These aren't one-off occurrences. These aren't one day only. This is what my life looks like on an hourly basis. And I wish I could say that it gets easier, but it doesn't. You develop coping mechanisms and support systems for dealing with it, but it's still rough. The nice thing is that I have screenshots of this. The harassment that I've dealt with in person in tech, I haven't had screenshots for. And so talking about that feels a lot different. Whereas this, I can fight back if I want. People believe it, they can't debate it, and they pay attention to it. But that's not the case elsewhere in my life. And so there are other women who came before me and made it so much easier for me to do this, and they had it so much worse than I did. But now it's harder than ever to press the publish button. But I'm no longer just writing for that girl who didn't fit in computer science, or the girl who was struggling at work, but I'm also writing for the girl who started a blog and wrote about it online. And hopefully those experiences will be easier for somebody else down the road. I also want to say this isn't just a tech problem. It's not just an internet problem, it's a problem. And so this would be a part of my life even if I wasn't writing blogs online. We need to fix it everywhere, even where it's less visible. So 1 year later, and I'm still blogging, but it looks a lot different. I work for Dev. I have well over 1 million reads and a lot more social media followers. I'm one of the co-hosts of a podcast with an overwhelming response. I get the sweetest responses on social media all the time. I'm one of the youngest Google developer experts and Mozilla tech speakers ever, and I'm speaking all over the world this year. So now I want to pivot and talk about why you should also blog. I write for 3 people: the past me, the present me, and the future me. So I usually say that blogging changed my career, but it didn't just change my career, it changed my life radically, for the better and for the worse, but mostly for the better. I say that blogging is the most selfish thing I've done. I do it mostly for those 3 people. And teaching is my whole favorite thing in the whole entire world, and I say that a lot, and blogging is an incredible outlet for that. But even if I didn't have an audience, it would still be so worth it. And it has to be to overcome the hard side. So first, I want you to write the post that would have helped the past you. If there's something that you struggled learning, if there's something that you struggled to find the answer for on Google, this is your shot to write something that would have been a game changer for you. Even if it's something that's been written about before, you still have a unique perspective and can add to that. My posts still help myself. I read my speaking posts all the time. And it's really helpful if you're coming back to something after a while. To reinforce and structure your learning so that you can keep learning and growing your skill set and so that you have something to prove based off of that. So I challenged myself to learn all these new things, and I did, and people thought that I knew more about them than I did because of that. And then to establish your career. So I'm speaking all over the world about augmented reality this year, and people think I'm an expert on it, and I'm not. I just wrote a blog post about it, and in general, people think I'm way more competent than I actually am. And then on a less selfish note, for all the people that you meet, including a lot of the people in the audience here that I've met through blogging, you'll make new friends and make the next person's road easier. So start with one post. You don't have to become an instant blogger, serious blogger overnight. Just write something. Something is better than nothing. And it'll start small. It did for me. I got 36 readers to my first post and thought that was a lot. And it may not be perfect. You'll probably want to go back and edit those posts in the future. I know that I have. But mistakes happen, imperfection happens, and worst case scenario, even if nobody reads it, you did something awesome for yourself. And when you do write those things, I want you to share it with me. So you can find me on those places, and so yes, you should write that blog post.